Yos, and you guys talk, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, was described as a cultural touchstone, showing the multifaceted nature of American culture and identity through the use of language. Katz, meanwhile, co-created WordleBot, so for all of you Wordle users out there, you can thank him, in 2022 to analyze players' Wordle guesses, and more recently was among a team of journalists awarded both a Pulitzer Prize and a George Polk Award for reporting on opioid overdose deaths among older Black men in American cities. Needless to say, Josh is nationally and internationally recognized for his work and its contributions to society. Let's give a warm welcome home to our fellow member of the Wolf Pack, Mr. Josh Katz.
It's going to be a lot to live up to. Bear with me one moment. Okay. Good morning. Graduates, faculty, administrators, family, and friends, congratulations to you all. I should probably start by acknowledging that, yes, I did drop out of this PhD program 12 years ago. If you're confused as to why I'm standing up here today talking to you all, I assure you, you are not alone. But I did finish my master's degree before I left. I survived linear models, qualifying exam, and I even finished my prelim, and I still have nightmares about measure theory. So I'm not totally unqualified. I left NC State, those 12 years ago, to start work as a graphics editor with the New York Times, where I still am today. Well, for many of you, your jobs will involve applying your statistical training directly. For me, most of my job is trying to comfort reporters and editors who come to me terrified that they're going to end up in what we call stats jail. That said, there was one time I used the Delta method at work shortly after I got there, and it was truly a thrilling moment for me, but no one else was as excited about it as I was. But that's okay. I learned that outside this building, people don't care quite so much about the particular procedures I used. They cared more whether I could tell them what a number meant and whether or not it could be trusted, and how to communicate and visualize that information, to tell a story effectively. Because statistics goes beyond simple observation. It's about extracting meaning from data and telling a story. I know it's a cliche, but I do always come back to that quote from John Tukey, who said, "Far better an approximate answer to the right question than an exact answer to the wrong question." So the question you're asking, the story you're telling, that's what matters. So sometimes the most honest thing you can do is to use inference in place of observation, or to say it in a less fancy way, to just make up some numbers. As you can probably imagine, that's an uncomfortable thing for a journalist to admit, but it's true. And one of the first times this really clicked for me was right here, thanks to Brian Rich's spatial statistics class. As he may have mentioned, for his final project in that class, I made a series of maps that use spatial smoothing to depict dialect variation in the US, so where people say soda or pop or Coke. But the thing is, the data that I used to make those maps, that already existed out in the real world. It had all already been published. But the smoothed version of that exact same data, the part where we filled in the gaps between observations and borrowed strength from neighboring points and put it all together to tell a compelling story, that was what really captured people's attention. And ultimately, that was how I ended up at the Times, and how I found myself working on another somewhat infamous piece of statistical data visualization, the New York Times election needle. If you recall 2016, that little jittery needle that was moving back and forth that eventually let you know that Trump was going to win, that's the New York Times election needle. And the origins of that is really, it comes down to that election night data is a mess. Right? Different counties report different speeds, early ballots and late ballots are different. So for most of the night, if you turn on your TV, the reported vote number that you see will be almost entirely meaningless. But it doesn't make the numbers useless, right? Since you know how precincts voted in the last election, you know which precincts have yet to report, you put all that together, throw in some Bayesian statistics, and you can come up with a pretty solid estimate of the final result, way before the TV networks can. So that's what we did for the first few races in 2014, and then at scale in 2016, and every major US election since then. It's one of the most prominent examples of statistical estimation in journalism that I can think of, and it works really well. Over the course of the night, if we do it well, our estimate stays flat, and you'll see the reported vote share kind of creep towards where we were at the beginning of the night. So the result is this number that we kind of just made up, but it's closer to the truth than the true fact that you could report. And inside the graphics department, my colleagues and I came to talk about facts like these as being truer than true. So on the one hand, you have the true thing, the actual observed quantity. It's known, it's a true fact. On the other hand, you have the statistical thing, the inference, which you've constructed from smoothing, modeling, adjusting, from statistical theory, from your own judgment, which if you do it well, if you're responsible about it, leaves you with something truer than the true thing. Truer because it better reflects the underlying reality. Which is an uncomfortable tension, inserting your own judgment between reportable facts and whoever your audience is. But it's one that graduates are all now trained to handle. I will say in my job, there's no copy editor for data. So very often, I'm the only person in the room who can tell whether the number we're about to publish is defensible, or if what we're doing is about to land us all in stats jail. Now I know that probably very few of you will be going into journalism. I imagine many of you will choose paths in science or industry or academia. You'll likely be surrounded by coworkers and co-authors who are just as numerate as you, peer review, all that stuff. But still, at some point, you'll have to rely on your own judgment for when to replace observation with estimation. You'll decide that the thing that you can measure directly isn't exactly the thing that you should report, exchanging an exact answer to the wrong question for an approximate answer to the right question. And you'll be responsible for building something truer than true. It's a remarkable power. Use it well. Congratulations again. Thank you so much.